So this is a video on how to bleed a hydraulic brake system on this r65 LS from 1984. You can see here I've got some flexible vinyl hosing connected up to the bleeding nipple on either caliper, because there's two calipers on this bike, and they're feeding into an old .4 brake fluid bottle with some sort of expired fluid in there. You should never reuse brake fluid after it's been open for a while because it absorbs moisture from the atmosphere. But they're good for using to collect the old fluid in this setup. And I've replaced all the lines. This is a full rebuild of the braking system, so everything's empty. And so the first part of this process is going to be to prime the system with fresh brake fluid. Got a brand new brake master cylinder and fluid reservoir here, and I'm just going to fill that up to this max line with some fresh brake fluid, and then put the lid with the rubber gasket back on. And when you've got fresh brake fluid in the system, the next step is to just open the bleed nipples a little. About one turn is usually enough, and that's 11mm spanner for that. And brake fluid is pretty nasty stuff, so I usually wear some gloves and try not to get it everywhere. And then what I do is I just start pumping the brake lever until you start to see some brake fluid come out here. It takes quite a while, especially if the system's empty, but you can see it's starting to come through there. If you've emptied the whole system, you'll see that the filling process uses up quite a bit of fluid. That was at max, and you just got to be mindful of that. You don't want it to empty out. And when you see fluid starting to come through, then you just tighten this back up and ready to go with the sort of standard bleeding process to get the air out of the system. So just tighten those off again. Then what you do with the bleed nipples tight, closed, you just pump this until you feel the pressure there, and then you hold it there. And then what you have to do is release the two bleed nuts. Just about a quarter of a turn. Until you feel that go away. Sometimes after you've replaced all of the components of the brake system, which I have, the master cylinder, all the hoses, and rebuilt the brake calipers, the bleeding can take quite a long time, quite a lot of pumping to get all the bubbles out. And I find you go through at least 2 to 3 reservoirs of clean brake fluid when you do this. Next time you bleed the brakes, you might not need as much, but be very careful that this doesn't go past minimum, because then you'll be sucking air back into the system at the top. So I just lightly close the lid and keep an eye on the level as I'm bleeding. And eventually you get bubble-free fluid coming up out of the bleed nipples and a firm feel on the brake lever, and that's when you know you're done. Then you tighten everything back up, and that's bleeding the brake system. I hope this helps.